Appreciate it.
Yes. Never know. This app is really long.
Tilt.
I don't know if we've ever actually chatted and met and stuff.
Yep.
Chris? I don't know if we've ever actually chatted and met.
I don't think we have Chris.
Nice to meet you finally.
Nice to meet you.
Really glad they gave us the room with the air conditioning.
Yeah. It's a plus.
Just what I needed. Super hot room.
You're interested in that.
gonna disconnect this.
Where the crew goes. It's not very good.
That'll answer my question. Move it to different areas. Okay. Yeah,
You know what? I'm gonna break your whole paradigm up. I choose for you to float in green. Oh no wait, I already gave it my green pen. Never mind.
Is that on paper here?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick right here. Okay, this one. Can we have an electronic copy after the 1AC?
I'll think about it. Alrighty. Quite the crowd. Everyone seems excited. Thank you all for coming here.
Is this part of the speech?
No, it's to get Michael warmed up. You ready? The girl's body turned up to the vacant lawn. Columbia Slow Forest. She was dressed in a long-sleeve t-shirt as a knee-length skirt was size too big. The policeman asked whether they knew the nurse said one we'd never seen her before. She's in from where I report things happened in January 1993. From then on, killings women began to be counted. The first victim was Esperanza. She was 13. For the sake of convenience, she leads the list. Although there are surely other girls who died in 1992, Esperanza was strangled to death. There was severe bruising on legs and ribcage. She was vaginally and anally raped probably more than once. 5 days later, Luisa was strangled. She was 16 years old, fair-skinned, and 5 months pregnant. Midway through February, some government found another dead woman. She had been stabbed to death. In her purse was a ticket for the 9 a.m. bus to Tucson, a bus she would never catch. See, found no play. A month later, a knife shopper saw a woman clinging chuckling to a wooden post. An ambulance came to the medic's desk to wanted to know who would pay for the ride. The knife shopper explained he had found the woman. I know, said the medic, but I don't care. What I care about is who will take responsibility. How can I take responsibility when I don't even know her name? Asked the knife shopper. Well, somebody asked you, said the medic. The other medic said there was no point because the woman was already dead. The woman's name was Isabel. She was a prostitute. The police blamed the crime on dissatisfied customers. The next month, in May, a dead woman was found in a dump between Fort Maquiadores. The policemen found 3 executives, 2 Mexican and the other American. The dead woman had dark skin and straight black hair past her shoulder. The American crouched down. I'm not touching her, said the American. I just want to see her. You'll take care of everything, won't you? The policeman said yes, of course, and tucked the money into the pocket of his pants. She had been strangled, raped, vaginally and anally. She's 5 months pregnant. The woman was never identified, so it was assumed she was a migrant on her way to the U.S. 3 days later, Guadalupe was killed. Guadalupe didn't die on her way to work, which would have made sense since the area around the Maquiador was deserted and dangerous. The cause of death was 3 gunshot wounds, 2 fatal. The last dead woman in May was found on the slopes of Cerro. She had been stabbed to death. There's unspeakable evidence of rape. Her skin was fair and her hair light colored. The police chief examined the place where the dead woman was found. The west saw the house was with cardboard roofs. Winding through an hour the east he saw a highway that led to the mountains and the desert. To the north he didn't see anything, just a vast monotonous plain as if life ended beyond Centennial. So despite what he hoped and believed, then he heard the dogs probably starving and wild like the children he caught a glimpse of when he arrived. He pulled his gun out and shot. The dog collapsed. The bullet had gone into its head. Without glancing behind him, he walked on down the hill. From here he thought everything looked different. Roberto Bolano's 2066 tells the story of femicides in Bortown, Santa Teresa during the time of the Maquiador. A reading of 2066 seeks to examine the intersection and entanglements of class, race, in the state and economic engagement with Mexico. Laura Reynares explains. The case is such a clear difference between victims of sexual violence who receive attention and those who actually those who are ignored. Because the worth in terms of class races and neoliberal model, the insignificance is paradoxical that for the global economic condition, such as glory on some dual metaphors being located with subaltern women's literal but shocking high rates of rape and murder. Because in 1993, the U.S. Mexican border went after natural treaty facility Maquiador. The Maquiador offered women independence and appalling exploitative. So the natural stipulated plans would exempt from tax. Slums go exponential. But post-states black by agreement breeding out for the femicide. 2066 tells sheds light on the way capital, patriarchy, and the state have enabled vicious deaths of subaltern, disposable women, and passive repetition. The horror show is an extreme. System privilege profits over life. While the narratives open, the spectrum of feminist interrogations of femicide seems lost in theoretical limbo. No responsible party has been found for Juarez femicides, and as time passes, the women end up lost in oblivion. After all, like New York's unimportant rape victims, they are poor and they are dark. What these femicides reveal is that death is a required input of economic growth. The refusal of U.S. and Mexico to engage in the question of femicide and resolve responsibility for maquiladora murders actively conceals the ontological nation of femicide that haunts neoliberals and garage for cautions. It is the prolific redirecting the transmitting history of the Bolanos 2066 refused post-colonial anxiety neoliberal demands are all piece of the larger globalized system of capital and genocide. The integral to project majority is represented in neoliberals' capital indifference to life that the deaths of women and single horrors cannot be more irrelevant. Yet death represents the political fact that it must be death in absolute demands something in neoliberals from nowhere more evident than the exploitation of condition the market or nothing just more than the name of ontological conditions and the deployment of death in the post-colonial state. The Bolanos work insists that if the post-colonial will not speak directly its relations to the neoliberal, then all that there is left to do is dramatize in a horrible fashion the constant presence of death that is everyday function of the market or the brutal inexplicable fact that neoliberal post-colonial state, the death of the market or derives its political from unremarkable regularity. Now in Santa Teresa there is no resolution of femicide. Rather, femicide is considered ordinary, thought to be collateral damage of economic growth. This perpetual condition demonstrates that death is always present in the time of neoliberal, and thus our task is to resolve the Maquiladora mills. Farad continues. To pronounce that the thing most tsunami would be adequately consensual death as always that happens. She has been dead for a month. The 2666 of one name is Maquiladora. There's no proper time of death because we know that there's no time that's not the time of a death. The political council, despite being political council, the Maquiladora were murders, the violence of repetition instructed them to be rhizomatic. The death or rape of a woman can no longer be disconnected. It can never belong to a time of the perpetual present. The Maquiladora murder Santa Teresa lives in the time of Maquiladora for Mexico. There is no time after the Maquiladora. Maquiladora instantiates new law that incarnates the death of anyone has acquired its own taxonomy for the rhizomatic connection of Sonora death and Maquiladora serial killers of women have been successfully resolved, said De Las Heras. Everything from falls in the category of ordinary crimes you'd expect in a city of concentrated growth. What the mayor does not understand that murders were never ordinary because death under neoliberal development, how does one live a time when this post-global moment has so fatally failed the women of the Maquiladoras who came north in search of prosperity and find only that the obligation that precarity imposes arrest, not only because of lack of resolve, but also because it means impossible to apprehend neoliberals. The Maquiladora murders are the most resident in this city where the economic roots are the exploited labor of Mexican women. Now, the task of resolving Maquiladora murders, it reveals that there can be no solution to global femicide without holding institutions accountable as possible suspects or causes that their unique form of engagement with 2066 gradually critically examines the institutional violence in order to conceive of a time and place outside the scene of that. Farad continues. Death is the final accounting of life, and act that life's undoing. Through the scene of death, the subject marks itself out in history and economic policy, subjugation, and politics of life, because the horror of Maquiladora murder turns on the events obscene. The Maquiladora versus the death scene is unknowable. Arrival of from the unknown place is the fate of the woman. The unknown place is the place of violence, the place that makes every place the no place of violence. Why are they killed cannot be answered with the full commitment of the state understanding and acting against the violence done to the woman. Fate's inability to address the why means that death becomes ubiquitous condition to be in the Maquiladora is an uber rhizome of death linking the over-inhabited place that promises unemployment with every other space of violence. The scene of death is unending, international, constituting the necropolis border crimes, and death is everywhere. Thus, the United States federal government should resolve economic engagement with Santa Teresa, Mexico. Maquiladora murders are perpetuated by the refusal of the U.S. to confront everyday forms of violence and death in Santa Teresa. To resolve economic engagement in the time of the Maquiladora is to acknowledge complicity in femicide. As students locating death and economic engagement in Mexico opens up the possibility of a university to come as a side of resistance to and freedom from neoliberal domination. Newman posits that dare to put the line on the intellectual age of increasing globalization speed with some political universities' place of unconditional freedom to question knowledge of the concerning the truth. The university without condition the promise of labor a holds a place of rigidity position which seeks to make the world the increasing power of the conglomerate demands what is to come be an effort to walk beyond the historical locateness and idealizing abstraction. None of the stories fit together to form a perfect whole. Acting out collection maxed out by face uses to acknowledge the catastrophe. Facing the death repeatedly makes also see himself. He also stops short of being returned as a by deformation of sovereignty, the unmaking of self-promotes and ethical question. Fate brings us into proximity to the murders, but not close enough murders. So comes the policies of commonplace, not possible to see the rationale. Those in power work through exception override duty and concept of law and justice. Almost all murder victims are labeled whores to make it easier to categorize them. The death spot of Santa Teresa by the police is also the drug to the Chamber of Commerce. Government officials of Sonora, even the American consul, concludes that it's better not to stir things up. None of the entities are willing to confront the deaths head-on. Kat and I believe that the judge should vote for the team that best narrates its place in time outside of neoliberalism. Our deployment of 2066 challenges governmentality's reliance on individual subjectification to sustain itself. Furthermore, the 1EC functions as a form of intersubjective economic engagement, challenges neoliberal attempts to commodify educational spaces. Sue Salmash argues governmentality's focus is accomplished through the individual educational economic participation technology through which it self-maintains intelligibility, counter-narratives of education and economic participation that involve critically reflexive accounts of their own positionalities and ethno-political choices are crucial in determining which neoliberal rationalities come to normalize is being remade. Against any grounds concerned with the performatively constituted forms of intersubjective economic engagement, considering that the economic take the narrative for close readers in the policy that it's the policy level macro and macro narrative of education, construction, and production in the field for the economic machinery. Rationale is the cancer towards competition and means of protection against worthless, whether imaginary or already plungers, fantasies of a perennial, prosperous, white, middle class, lucky country. The everyday learning are brings together the language of the audit to the language of national policy for the language of the institution, articulated by which they will be judged. Educational participants are no longer positioned as students and educators. They are constituted as entrepreneurial consumers and producers to whom competition and operate as a powerful technology for shaping individual identity and social relations into neoliberal ethos of education and difficult to expand in the nation. The pedagogy encounters.
Market encounters.
Alright, take a second breath.
Yeah, some. I just didn't get through like the last 5 words.
Cool. 2 minutes and 10 seconds. You just 10 minutes prep. Yep.
What?
I was just asking about that. Alright, Jay, why vote that?
What?
I said, why vote that?
So first there is the role about who best narrates the time and place outside of neoliberalism. There are a couple portions of this. The reading of 2666 is able to first change the way that we encounter with death and the engagement that we have with death. Second, it talks about the way that the dramatizing of what is going on in Santa Teresa and the way that we do it with this like alarming regularity and the way that I read with the monitor. All those are ways that we look at what is going on within Santa Teresa and understand those, and that has a productive effect through the reading of those within spaces.
Okay, cool. So these women, why are they killed?
Why are they killed? That's part of the argument, and I think you should default to the Farad was talking about the way that the uber rhizome of death, that there's an entanglement of the state, of gender, of class, all of those come together, and the idea when we don't engage with death head on, which is about the responsibility portion, we are unable to see the rationale because we only see the death after the fact. Rather, we should have this engagement with death to be able to understand and trace the entanglement that
you
occurs.
have an engagement with death. Why do you have an engagement with the United States federal government?
So it's important. So I don't think I want. What do you mean by engagement with the United States federal
You know
government?
that part where you're like the United States federal government should.
Yeah. What do you mean by engagement?
I'm not asking you what do you mean because you're the one who said it.
I didn't say engagement. Engage the United States federal
The
government.
United States federal government should resolve economic engagement with Santa Teresa.
I'm asking what you mean by us engaging the United States federal government.
I'm asking you.
The Farad evidence talks about the idea of the responsibility to precarity and holding institutions accountable. There are two portions that the Farad
Which piece of evidence says the U.S. is accountable?
No, the Farad. So the Farad evidence talks about the way that there is a multitude of actors that are accountable, and also so there's two portions of resolved as responsibility. First is the institutions. First is the institutions taking accountability, and second is finding those who actually perpetrated.
Piece of evidence. Which piece of this evidence says that the United States federal government is responsible?
There are 3 portions of the Farad evidence. That one right there talks about the consul, the Chamber of Commerce, governmentality, government officials. All those talk about
the Chamber of Commerce from the state of Sonora are not wanting to stir
American consul, right there.
Even the American consul visits the police chief in Santa Teresa only because an American sheriff.
So that's why we're talking about the way that the uber rhizome exists, that when you try and like create an arborescent idea of what the cause is and what that is, there are a couple, like when we ask the United States to resolve, that resolve implicates responsibility on 2 levels, which I was trying to say before when you cut me off. The first is that the assuming of responsibility, how they participated in that entanglement, but also an attempt to trace the rest of the entanglement.
Okay, cool. So if we don't do that, what happens?
So the neoliberalism continues to perpetuate itself, specifically in the way that these rhizomes recreate themselves, and when we try and identify just a single cause within that rhizome and don't approach it as a rhizome in
will you defend the entire discourse of the YC?
The entire discourse of the YC?
Yes.
In like what context do you mean?
Every word you spoke.
Every word that I spoke?
Yeah.
Without any context, I don't like know in what, because I don't want to give you.
Okay, I want to extend cross-sex a little bit just because you said that. If you're not willing to defend every word that you spoke, then what is the negative supposed to do?
We will defend the searching of the entanglement of the uber rhizome. We will defend the responsibility of the uber
rhizome. Okay.
We will defend the reading of 2666 as productive. Like what more? Like I don't like talk about the discourse that you find problematic. Then we will discuss that and how that implicates the performance of the YC. Have you had 25 more seconds? You need these? Nice.
For the next block, can we have electronic copy so we can both prep?
Sure. I'll flash that to you.
Thank you.
So routine. No routine's used to this.
It's true.
It's gonna be one-off case.
You take that. We can both see this.
Never use this.
Yeah.
I find it a debate.
That's not the one I see.
That's not the one I see?
That's the flash drive I'm giving you for the one I see. What? The clear.
You can have 2 copies. More people are going to be like,
You good, Michael?
There's a lot of files on that flash drive.
It's called 1 and 2.
Yeah, I just saved it under the name.
Only when we're documenting.
Found it?
Yeah, there was just like a lot of like weird folders.
Yeah, that flash drive installs Windows 7.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, this is not Dropbox.
Just call
If there's
one
anything
C.
I left out, just.
It's just called one C.
Yep, it's called
Yeah,
one.
it's just called 1
I
and
haven't
2.
pulled it up.
That's what they told me.
Michael, you need this?
No, I don't need it. So
Yeah,
that's
there's
Dropbox.
that.
Oh wait, crap! I accidentally just exited it.
Okay, what's it called?
One and two.
Never mind, I need it. Never mind.
Right, items. Octos.
Sure, I don't need it.
I did save it in there. Ready?
I'm good.
Okay.
what's the order?
One off case.
Okay.
Ready? The only ethical option is calling for the end of the world, calling attention to the antagonism that undergirds the U.S. is the only way to address the conflict within it, like the 1AC Wilson intends to draw attention from the violence that underwrites the modern world expansion to think that it will be crazy to call the world itself to account not a myriad of discriminatory practice, but the world itself. We are to make a world that responds to the most lucid emancipation ethics would value repair the demolish the subjectivity of the slave that structured the U.S. antagonism will be dismantled, convincing ourselves of the important conflict that have been promoted to the level of antagonism, class struggle of gender conflict, immigration versus the self-rose to the level of ethical acceptance, the power of blackness retreating, and to the white radical who retired from the struggle. The question echoes librarian, the grave of the young black panther to honor not only the young voices that affected the seismic shift of the political landscape, but also the intellectual protocol of incarnate with the revolutionary zagged who is possible the dream of better ethics. These grammar can be discerned by the systematic when these speculated for the spectator image of social terminal through the root of conflict, record civil struggle, the resolution with a dialectical entirely, the literature, what positions, grammar, antagonism breaks down the immediacy, conflict regardless of the sentiment of the film, the spirit unitary mobilizing of political discourse, and the question of civil society, that itself by the reconfiguration of rights through freedom, maintaining its position of anti-blackness, its construction of American benevolence, hegemony, its coherence. What we need is radical injection of society incoherence. The wretched of the earth, the politics of the black body, Wilderson, 2003, slavery is the greater level, or black something position, principle of back on the grammar, hegemony, threatened with incoherence, no other body function is so complete, different from the complete to black senses, descent of absolute dereliction, black body function, you may have gratuitous violence with a civil society, it's possible all political tragedies, anti-black, the dance of that black liberation makes radicalism more dangerous to the United States because it is a condition of possibility of political politics of refusal to affirm a program, a complete disorder, mother embracing disorder, state of political movement in the United States today is marked by the agoraphobia of the child and black subject, central to disconfliction of civil society. Now they are silent on the question of racism that makes it assumed known and perpetuation of race must be a required question. The intersection with gender, Dr. Crenshaw, 97, the ideology of white privilege operates through total silence, the ideological struggle to maintain silence about members of white implications through strategic use of gender, intersecting gender discourse to preserve the silence, colossal unseen defective silence surrounding white gender, keep little tool protected, white privilege as the act of not passive, as absent about speech, by whiteness signify the existence and discourse of silence, listen and symbolize the natural conditions, assume no sound, symbolize the hierarchical structure and surely just speech. Now, the system of white supremacy also creates the myth of the model minority. This creates the discourse of an immigrant as the deserving poor, which justifies a decided black underclass Tang in 2000. There, if you challenge acknowledge what is commonly at stake between the black and working class world, like African and Asian American poverty versus the spirit of distinct to the black culture, part of the core assumption is suggest the immigrants are declining social communal practice, which save them for underclass standard. We are confronted with movement for a discourse of the immigrant as a deserving poor. The location is determined by behavior to constitute a culture of poverty. The immigrant, therefore, the devolution of decided black underclass. Now, the part of our performance is in confrontation with the myth of the model minority. Rewritten white supremacy of the vector oppression. It uses police minority broadly. There are several impacts. First is psychological violence of Asian American. Second is the oppression of other minorities where white supremacy justified through the myth. And third is resentment between these minority groups. China in 93, a model minority Asian American portrayed hard work, intelligence, susceptible to portrayal of purpose and general public to ignore the needs of model minority because of the largely unquestioned assumption. The one can see a label for a tool of oppression which denies the existence of oppression to many Asian American legitimize the oppression of racial minority. The mystic creates subjective only both inside and outside the Asian American community. This audience unsympathetic problem of Asian American thinking Asian Americans have succeeded in officials that deny funding for social service programs called submission and excluded Asian American student for opportunity program. African American Latino poor whites are told look at those Asian anyone can make it into this country. The blame is justified by mediocrity. We are complicit with the oppression of other racial minorities. The bullying creatures against Asian American model minorities such as convenience, cable, and Korean Americans in Los Angeles. Discovered many Korean Americans have used the human shield of conflict between the white majority and the anger of the black minority. Now the alternative is a ontology paradigmic analysis that poses the question whether or not a civil society is ethical, wills, and can an ontology paradigmic analysis movement dedicated to overthrow its own compromise. We're done in order to unwilling to hold them out of the fire of future fire predicate on the ontology paradigmic analysis. We are allowed to add each one to the attempt to display by other pragmatic considerably application power to pose the question to great power. Now we perform it through a process of conscientization, a process of naming our will, understanding forces of oppression from our this results in real world change. Also achievement 2007 conscientization, being able to name the word meaningful education to recognize and understand the impact of forces of oppression on like the process of calling and false and conflict clarification what really stated and within us while we move out the word of promote recognition of the word that's dynamically and making such recognition often inspire people to work against oppression being their efforts to transfer the world, naming the world with important steps to actively changing it. Now our method includes a process of self-reflection. We must focus on oppression. We constantly lean into that discomfort instead of distancing ourselves. No one asks to be privileged, but what we choose to do with that privilege is a choice that must be continually negotiated. More in 11. Intersectionality counterfeit is a person who declares understanding makes sure the oppression have yet to address he makes it oppression that seeks to demolish a political favor released out of their way. The ways in which we function as an actor, we might use the opportunity to read the complicity and privilege located in here. The occupied required locating the IA intersection, we should reflect the unoccupied sense of our privilege work must be done at the level itself, and we cannot rally on our progress. Now go on to case. The process of tying the Juarez murder to the maculadores especially disempowers women. It's incorrect to blame them for working Martinez and 09. The portrayal of femicide and incursion of representation involved the maculador that associated with women being killed in Juarez because the sexualized representation underlines the figure of victim and predominant representation. Sexual women in Juarez, the representation because even more paradoxical when associated with the economic power. The work of the woman is a macular Juarez woman's fluid far from being sublime, possibly appears to constitute a challenge of patriarchy by virtue of labor. They denote a direct confrontation of patriarchal domestic and independence for women that fought for the misogyny and paranoia. Patriarchal associated with the sexualized representation of Juarez, women's sexualization of macular work to make her obvious candidate to become a victim of femicide. The board imagine in reality study show that percentage of murder one in Chihuahua have actually worked at a maculador is quite well popular in textual representation reinforce the image of feminine hapless by means assuming that social economics is part of portrayal keeps a vulnerable victim. He also tried the misogyny conceptualized the proper way women in Mexican society. Now we can imagine the maculadors as a site of empowerment as well emphasizing fear and death just consign the workers to a permanent victim status turns the case because this fear prompts as a submissive stereotypes. It's in Martinez 09, the case of the Juarez infants of power, gender violence, their massive scale, the killing to have what's for the purpose of terror along the female representation allowed feature stock image of border and woman enjoy the economic power and drain to outside the stereotypes victim of the construction of femicide and Juarez beyond the victim is generated the femicide. The real tragedy is that they appear to be little genuine societal image of space for the otherness and the woman's narrative hold as fear and the death of the characterization of women who are a victim that significant factor that become casualty the portrayal follows a vicious cycle language of the women globalization into questions to add up for the cultural representation of victim by failure solid all who are the women defense stereotypes of material workers and becomes crucial to even theorize about possible and include considered why the representation of women as victims continues to be so prevalent. They are all clearly linked on paralyzing apprehension differences as dominant digital effect on that term. They utilize the categories of women. This reinforced the binary opposition that was traditional derogation of women. The Silverman 88 having established male sexuality or childhood family equivalent of relying still on simultaneously. She was also a former identity victim which relies on punches quite ladder with non-identity plurality and taxes which depends on proximity. This undertaking only lead by the black binary formulation feminine currently who was restricted to derogation of women initiative rational fixing totally like a visual authority close to her body substrate pattern identification assuming being political value in relation to his or her socially assigned gender. There is some commodity expected to the categories of man and woman now turn their utilization. Oh, that's already repeat. Now, the affirmative play of liberated Virginia forms of debate is usually the white experience of theorizing from nowhere, sitting on top of an ivory tower without a measure of their race identity, only reproduces authority to speak in a self-forget identity. Down to that body here, regular place for living body experience only with things to expose a weekend argument. The embodied self of bracket is relevant to theory, is best we are told to reason from nowhere. And we are white philosophers to speak for all of us without the slight mention of his or her race identity. The point also should be the full authority to speak from nowhere is probably through one of the power only begun with lost to want to use the pleasure of forgetting the pleasure of power expressing the comprehensive original material, the particular strategy function, legend, which they theorize the critique of one is capable of undergoing social history, family return of each one body, the body meaning, with the body, the phenotype, what like it, ontological modulation, aesthetic, component, race, protection the body, protected by the historical practice, and discourse of the body is codified, and this is sort of meaning that states is scripted and constituted and process, negotiated to have one dark body made by the white gaze, then to have the body return to the social placement of violation, ego is all interpreted as a time, the white man, the perception, description of white symbol and meaning of social imaginary, there's nothing pattern white gaze, there's a rich social history, epistemic condition, merchant, like what so what is seen in the white gaze, see my body, and something alien to me.
Make it the argument how they have to defend entirely the 160.
They have to defend the entirety of the 180 crossover, but very shifted on how they will not defend the discourse. If you're talking about stories and trying to step out of the neoliberal context, then we are critiquing the stories that you have read through the discourse and through the Martinez card that we read on case.
Alrighty, on the critique, let's talk about the links in the 1NC. First is being silent on racism. Is there another one besides that?
Crenshaw says that you cannot be silent on the question of racism, especially when there's
okay,
an
I just said that one. I asked. There's a different.
One.
Is there another link besides that?
The second one is the Wilderson evidence, saying that the position of the female body in Juarez has only been possible by the dereliction of the black body.
Okay, that's a root cause argument. I'm asking about link claim.
Yeah, we say that the fact that you ignore that
okay,
is
so
a starting point.
Omission of racial. It's omission of racism. Is the alternative
really.
unconditional?
Yes.
Okay, just want to clarify that. How are your alternatives compatible when Wilderson describes the Asian positionality as one as a junior partner of civil society?
We would like to disagree.
That's part of my entire argument. This is a clear distinction. We agree that Asians are part of the anti-black system in civil society, and that's called the myth of the model minority. The part of the performance that acknowledges that, and the reading of the more evidence about how we relate that system to anti-blackness is why those two things are
okay, let's talk about Osajima's process for Asian conscientization.
Yeah.
What is the process?
Should I talk about? Osajima says conscientization is a process of being able to name your role, identify yourself, a process of self-reflection to identify who you're in relation to.
So Osajima is discussing the way that Asian American communities discussing with each other are able to...
Not really. Osajima says that their discussion of the method of conscientization and discussion of common problems and common experiences of Asian Americans is what happens in the community. However, your self-reflection and your own personal experiences...
Can I please ask a question?
Yes.
So the Yancey evidence talks about how the idea of whites have a view from nowhere, and we can never have self-reflexive privilege in the context of when
Not
we are
really.
white. How does this work with your arguments about the idea that you are quote unquote self-reflexive in your Asia argument?
The Yancey evidence says that before you can deem a process as liberatory for all of us, you should identify yourself as who you are, where you're speaking from, and your social identity.
It says that whites can never get rid of
not really. It says that white people should recognize their privilege before they prescribe actions for other people.
Alrighty, on case, your Silverman evidence is a critique of a rigor raised by difference of more than one. Why is this applied to the affirmative?
Michael?
Okay, the Silverman evidence says that when you use the categories of women, it's specifically talking about biological differences in the violence of that, of rape, etc., and the killings based on those.
So we shouldn't talk about rape because it has to do with the biology of women?
No. That said that the way you talk about rape only in terms of biological sense, other types of gender identities can be raped as well, and that needs to be acknowledged in order to know the fluidity of that.
So if we cannot talk about women in the sense of the biological, what does that mean? We should never talk about people in the sense of biological? Because it seems like a lot of your cases...
Not in the context, we just are critiquing the representation of the one and see how that was practiced.
Well, that's not
we should say
real
that
quick,
it should be more inclusive.
Is race defined by positionality or phenotype indicators?
Phenotype or positionality, I'm not sure what that question is. We say
so
racism is a product
Osajima talks about bloodlines and lineage. Wilderson talks about positionality. Which one defines racism?
Osajima talks about the Asian identity.
Start prep. What does he say?
Osajima is more talking about the Asian community and what it means to be Asian. The Asian identity
bloodlines,
is
right? He says second generation
Just
Koreans.
because I'm from Korea does not mean I'm a Korean American.
That's fine. Thank you, Gabe.
It's really hot in here. Yeah.
I'm told the air conditioner is running.
just have to be a million crazies.
Male and female.
It's a good thing I get called better now. Not a lot of that.
I think Leo is kind of a baller name.
I would take that. Like we haven't said this shit.
Hey, is it condo or 2AC real octaves?
2AC real octos.
Condo was modified early. I mean later, that's what.
It's the one that says the speech that she's giving in this round.
Alright, we're ready when you are.
The order?
It's case
Case
number.
Thank you.
We don't link to their first argument that is the context of Santa Teresa, not Juarez, Mexico. Now they want to see perform Singapore, aka an impossible gap between Santa Teresa, Mexico, and say outer space of Juarez. They want to see all to engage the Santa Teresa regardless of the extent to which Maquildo and Rahansa as a permanent reality continue failing to resolve ethical responsibility for Maquildo and murders actively conceals the ontological condition of femicide within every neoliberal exchange of the product. We believe that the judge should vote for the team best narrates a place and time outside neoliberalism. Our ontological understanding of the world is necessary to account for the one and sees impacts. In order to win the debate, they have to explain why H. conscientiousness and decreasing civil society outside the human rights of death insinuated by the event of Maquildo or unless they can demonstrate a method for disentangling from the rise zone. You should read their argument as an outpour of the event of violence. The one who sees results finally unknowable. There's no we tie to these time neoliberalism just saying empowering because they have a job north of where the Uber rise zone deathly sits within Santa Teresa and the shawl of our substance we saw back there because the intersubjective anti-engaged has empathy which holds the USFG responsible for the violence within Santa Teresa. So this is good because one, it creates active systems by testing governmental logic which stops sensitivity. The second is violent solution only engaged with the spectrum so we kill doors voting negative dice of the death continue violence against women within Santa Teresa and 266 acknowledges relentlessly assaults and demands the suspension of our privilege. We make the dispensability of women divisible allowing the theorization of lived experience to assist does not let the reader subsume us into her own narratives, rather calls for a fourth and unconditional hospitality, the possibility of justice win in 12th book. A lot of sex relentlessly assaults reduced man suspension and the mastery of money something can apply real segregation that's the word rather than abstract being the recuperate the reader until full brings the ideas of hospitality make the visible, the invisible, the effective word, the reading belongs attached to a systematic ratio of disposable people for contemporary debates, the idea of discourse and power overpowers the possibility of theorizing lived experience no matter how the reader tries, but Lana does not allow her subsume the book into her own narratives. 266 officially calls into question the hospitality between the reader and the text. Readers of the 266 are forced to be buried alive in the shape for the wilderness of violence, or the reader calls forth non-conditional hospitality connected to the promise of justice. This is the reason why we don't link to any of their Yancey evidence. Now, no link to the Silverman emphasis in the context of a rigor, not the affirmative. You are the only ones who allow for binary oppositions as per the critique because you discourse on the idea of discourse. Also, doesn't we don't construct subjects or objects. We endorse the ontology which supersedes any of those arguments and no commodification because you can't incorporate the ghost. You can only mourn her specter. Peterson in 7 in morning must recognize the body that was into us, but totally other. The loss of the other carries into the paradox of the dead is closer to us than ever, only existing as Oliver. This over proximity explained the heart of the dread that is in the morning, and the other who just lodges inside it's like a guest who has overstayed his welcome. One occupies oneself with ghosts, only to exercise something sort is done to be neglected or put aside, transmitted to others, not to be allowed to die. Beloved is not to be negated, rather it's precise persistently as the spectre who resists annihilation who remains long after. Now onto the critique. First, the Athos ontology, Maquildo murder as the Uberism death, see death explicitly through the Maquildo murder concede a meta-framing issue that the Uberism death ontology takes in account the spectre of the minority in the first place. Now, the Athos ontology is necessary to overcome biological attachment to identity-based and phenotype and genetic reliance on representations on a mind resistance against the same self-reattachment essential. It's only Athos ontological perspective in overcome historical amnesia the way U.S. imperial functions to disavow death, Paxson, and Town led me. Asian American criticism against theorized beyond biological identity determination. America itself is categorized Asian American studies copy the unconstituting Asian America, the heterogeneity of the literature and the ideological rigidity of Asian American literary criticism, the discourse of the abstract of annihilation criticism, the illustration of discourse of Asian American intellectual pathetic and entrepreneurs, and the commodification of races of battle compasses of the acknowledgement of polar representation of the body constitutes the most consistent political conscience by conceiving of representation as part of the assault. The human morality undercuts its argument in elastic and American Asian criticism engaged in form in technical reference of enables such critical nature in the scientific subject and interterminal and only empirical method in responsible for producing knowledge to question now the also otherwise the estimation American U.S. empire haunted ontological indeterminacy is that it coexists with the empire itself to give techniques supplementary values disagreements of the knowledge of historical and these 9 cases it is said no possibility of solving case you don't make the U.S. resolve like an engaged with Santa Teresa consciousness can ever include the ideas of the spectre that's win evidence versus the impacts. 1 the women who were killed or are denied their deaths. We continue to understand their death as being no violence ergo letting them continue. 2nd, we never hold institutions accountable which takes passive citizen down the all fields for ancient consciousness. The first Asian Americans historically used vacuous group denying self-spirituality and historical subjectivities that merge within the content of self-treating race and marked body signifiers. The unity depends on unethical essentials and conceals the apparatus of representation of Hack and style in Lebanon epistemology. The given others of the tendency of representation just to the content of the narrative, the social transformation, defining and institutionalized subject figure as the body agency of the truth, the secure expectation of the body that is corporal and affects by median representation. The body that animates depends on persistent conflation of historical subject with representation underwriting claims are centralized. These stances assume by the approach limitation empirical reality. The representation drops or bodies on marriage and knowledge appear to reflect on themselves that depends on policing and boundaries. The representation of race and knowledge that there is no link between the subject categorized Asian Americans and narrative of race figures that supposedly march body becomes a way of discourse and structuring splitting constituents. And their second, their method of personal narratives is unethical. The I constantly slipping away in terms of the other personal experience assumes impossible narrative coherence that forces speakers to violence onto themselves. Butler in one narrative coherence may be 4 plus 1. The attempts on limits of notability, the whole person kind of coherence or life in narrative form requires qualification of that life to tell the story pro life to be go in autobiography requires another to be violence or something friend but suffering confession and condemnation and the interruption of this way which we are interrupted by alternating not only recoverable ourselves in the case where we're ethically implicated in lives of others. We say that the only narrative can be self-destructive survival and we say this cannot survive without any punishment of having someone supposed the I will make some self-driver beliefs he's precise and what it discovers in second I tell the story in a straight line I'm losing dread I start getting forget something crucial the eye of the narrative comes to experience itself and knowing what it is and then the eye is no longer married and narrative brings you to the other eye that finds that in the base of another and is breaking down and constructing the body is inable denies its relation to the other present seeing its strategy of white supremacy that attempts to shield self from immortality. Peterson in where the race imagination understands the white body constructed what it says in the alien bill plus viewers and admitted that even though the law protected property investments in whiteness as black male he had no such claim to property white is not property in new word plus he would have no claim because he's white bastard to proper identity contaminated ability just bio containment seems to surface with reference to the male body to make the claim that the body is mine to deny its relation to the other relation to the other and gender law my body marks my body is always already mourning its own death but appearance of my body suppressing condition the possibility of its disappearance white in imagination recognizing the dying racial period this possibility of the body's not being minor corporal impurity tied to the body's mortality racialization seems to affirm the white body's living presence make the black body stand in front of the threat of that death of the homicide and the one I see supposed to be crass whole society grew its engagement in 266 but undergoing the approach to the honest dystopia we attach ourselves to global structures struggles against neoliberalism and echelon 7 growing literature with the resistance civil society underdeveloped is theoretically underdeveloped and theoretically empirically suggests for some mapping the power and condition possibility for resistance rather than the detail of resistance itself. There's not been any other significant engagement with literature on the anti-globalization movement or the theorization of significance of the institute politics resistance and identity politics of the one and C centralizes the experiences of women and creates epistemology problems that crush coalitions for key or challenging hegemonic discourses as Crux in 95 the black feminist identity politics of the woman appears universal woman experience are not the same feminism the massive power religion empowering someone with a expensive others when wrong situated members of class race have zero sexual orientation nature in this dangerous to similar dimensions social situation I'll play out in also trying to realizing claims identity positive but like yes of over different times was intended for an excessive partition maybe experiment based direct on the claims to knowledge of problem the claim of knowledge rights from the experimental basis scientific methods outside the left and no basis which the end value the basis of knowledge of epistemology and hobby and southern coalition solidarity the endpoint in the political doing salvation with life and common action search can be challenged falsely universalistic mark and universalistic
go back up to Osajima card.
It's militaristic metaphors from framing the Asian body in opposition to the other Christianities or Sajima in some based on interviews second generation Chinese immigrants identify key factors condition process that contribute to the critical conscience and research and those who work with the renewed generation Americans to make it to real high the rates of global to collect the global to collect general like the stories that explore the issues of family identity and racism in each interview general into the attention family and race and racism were covered in the process of consensualization about the concept of our kids water being hidden within us while we move in the world and the world's an important step towards actively challenging and about the text trying to punish the race by raising the critical conscious had not taught them about the Asian American experience. And this ontological perspective of sexuality is the best way to resolve anti-blackness only by applying position the ghost and placing psychically achieved blackness in this comparatively better strategy than stealing away covert in 12 years considered the body directly the possibility of rupture at the side of the languages. Market side of the languages on the there.
Languages?
Yeah, the side of the languages.
Let's first start from the bottom. Osajima. Military metaphors. Where is that in Osajima?
So there are militaristic metaphors within the Osajima constructs the Asian American body as something in opposition to others.
Opposition to what?
The metaphors it uses of replenishing the ranks.
Yeah, but what is
a
the
military
Asian
metaphor.
American body opposition to?
So other positionalities is
it's
what
also a reason why you can't.
I don't think it was
like one the
says
alternative that you
moving
use
on.
never effectively
You say that
solve
identity politics is bad, correct?
What?
You said identity politics is bad. Your crux card, right?
Yes.
First line said, black feminist identity policy asserted what appears as universal women's experience. Where did we claim that black feminism is the universal experience?
The idea behind that we can position ourselves as having experiences like as universal. This is a reason why like all of your ideas why Wilderson like posits the black bodies.
Where did the negative claim that there's a universal experience?
The universal experience, like the 1NC strategy premise off of the Wilderson arguments talks about how the black body is seen differently in the realm of civil society.
Also, it's another link to the Asian American idea that there's an Asian American
Personal
subjectivity that
Personal
you can describe in as something that is a perfectly knowable.
That's fine. Personal narratives. Where did we read one?
The Butler argument talks, well, first the Yancey evidence on case is a reason why you tell us that we must discuss our privilege and our
identifying
own
yourself and your social location is a personal narrative. This seems to, your Butler card says talk about trading autobiographies. Where did I talk about my experiences?
No. The Yancey evidence makes it so that we must discuss our quote-unquote privilege. The Yancey evidence is very clear on this subject. This is a disadd to allowing that to occur. The Butler evidence says that we can never fully know ourselves.
All right,
so when we posit our personal narratives onto another space,
all right, case.
One, it's like
you started your 2AC saying that the 1AC performs in Aporia. From what I know, Aporia is like an internal contradiction. What does that do to get rid of the violence of Juarez? Or Santa Teresa?
First, Santa Teresa. The idea of what Jaron said when this first is crossing, the idea of holding the United States responsible for its actions. Like, yes, the United States can never like fiat anything in the context of Santa Teresa because it is a fictional place. But the idea of holding a precarity and seeing the United States as complicit within the violence that goes on in Santa Teresa.
The U.S. is complicit somehow gets them to economically engage with Santa Teresa.
No. So within neoliberalism that the U.S. like constitutes, it's a reason, like within that neoliberalism that they create, they are always implicit in the deaths that occur.
Now you say you don't link to our Juarez representations because you never mentioned Juarez. Here's the line from your card. Juarez becoming notorious, the femicide. Maquiladores offer women independence and applying exploratory property.
Bolanos 266. Would you like for me to answer this question?
Yes.
Okay. 266. Bolanos 266 book is in the context of Santa Teresa, Mexico. The entirety of the 1A6 narrative was from the book of Santa Teresa. It is an allegorical representation of Juarez, but it is not the Juarez reps, which your card is what's specific
to. Really specific.
All the violence we have demonstrated within the 1AC is specific to Santa Teresa.
I'm confused. If you are talking about femicide, you talk about maquiladores. What matters about the city?
That is the Aporia portion.
We are like endorsing the specter. The idea of an allegory.
So you're endorsing the specter of Santa Teresa?
Yes.
Okay, so why does that not still portray the representations of maquiladores and femicide?
First is you can't like commodify fictional characters, which is the value of a fictional like allegory. Second
I have
is
a question. What is the Uber rhizome?
The Uber rhizome. So the 1NC's arguments were inherently arboristic, and they thought that there is a root cause to the explanations and the violence that occurs within neoliberalism. The rhizomatic thinking of maquiladora, the Farad evidence talks about how the maquiladora is the Uber rhizome of death, understands that there is complexity and a entanglement between the reasons why this violence is allowed to occur in the first place in the context of neoliberalism. Understanding the spectrality and hauntology behind this is the only way to effectively account for.
What is hauntology?
What?
What is hauntology?
Hauntology or ontology?
Hauntology.
It's the usage of, like, the embrace of this specter versus the idea that being can be described as something that is already knowable.
AKA.
So embrace the specter, what does that mean?
So.
To raise the specter is to acknowledge the specter.
To be responsible to the specter, but understand that so that ontology, that being can never be defined in all of its entirety. So when we say the black body or the Asian American body.
That represents like the subject-object binary, which the specter arguments supersede. Because that ideology doesn't work.
I think just straight down that way and like in that little hallway to the side of where it works.
Yeah, you think I got time to smoke a cigarette?
504 remaining.
It'll be just a cake. And that doesn't matter because no one's here.
No.
Just 2 and C.
That round will be over in like a few minutes. I think you could just like move it for the rebuttals or something.
Yeah, we can just.
Do you live near CPS?
I live in Palo Alto.
Okay.
It's about an hour drive.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pride.
Okay.
5 minutes remaining.
GPM.
Alright, it'll be just a cake.
Am I going to need a new sheet for an overview?
You can vote on your sheet if you want.
What would you suggest?
It will take about a minute, so. Anybody not ready?
One second. Yeah.
Alright. Okay. Frame the debate around the cave by the concession of the link coming out of the YMC. The affirmative has conceded that they try to reform civil society. Well, this evidence says that civil society is unethical in the status quo, and the affirmative is just a way to reform that. This is what's going on in the examples when they try to blame the United States federal government and other institutions, and try to hold the call of the affirmative stuck in the mindset that holding the institutions call will actually lead to real change. Reform civil society, trying to make it better for the women living in immaculate doors. What do you do for the women living in immaculate doors? What do you do to stop the rapes? Absolutely nothing, which is the reason why the impact framing for this debate should be only about impacts you can solve, which is the reason why the alternative is an ontology paradigmic analysis, which will listen to evidence and ethical questions, intellectual these patients. This is parallel correspondence to contradiction, which specifically to Asian American that said, given myself reflect on the world out of position, we have read the myth of the Imam came to terms with it, and said why it's bad and how it simply came to position anti-blindness, and the impact of that was wrong. Extend those now. The myth of the Imam causes psychological violence against Asian Americans, because denouncing Asian are always excluded and are not seen as viable citizens within the U.S. So they're given low poverty rates in the context of status quo. The myth of the Imam also causes resentment between minority groups. That is caused because Asians believe in the minority and could feed off of it. The other impact is the social damage impacts are perceived by the Willis evidence. The black body is social damage in the context of status quo. It is ontologically dead. Nothing but ontology or any of the Heidegger nonsense of affirmative excuse can do anything about it, because it is a static and the fluidity that the affirmative excuse is parasitic on the black body, because they can never access this type of fluidity, which is the reason why you should pervert and that it turns the case, because you need to start the bottom. Their emancipatory school would not be impossible without the fungibility of slave. Willis in 2008, emancipatory school to present further evidence of fungibility. Blackness never watched life defense will increase in the capitalist disappearance. The blackness continues violence. So the emancipatory school is majority marks on feminism. and post-colonial and sexual liberation, and there was a class movement, political, disco practice, garner and suffering might not have developed child slavery, create the human agriculture, disparate agency. You should also frame the debate and the relative concession of the piece of war evidence. The piece of war evidence when you try to solve the intersection problem of race, class, and gender without acknowledging your own privilege, that it ultimately fails because you poison your own performers. Some role of the best who best performs heavily methodological liberation persecutes. If we prove that their performers did not come to grips with their privilege, it means that they cannot solve the line proverb. She says that the affirmative is a meta-framing issue. The meta-framing issue should be disregarded because of the impact over it. Ontology does absolutely nothing. They don't have a piece of evidence of how ontology maps itself in the real world, which is the reason why you should only prefer the material violence and going on in this context at school. We acknowledge the complexity and the taking away of race relations, except we say that the complexity, it is complex, which is why the myth of the modern still feeds anti-black, and there's differences in the race in the context of society, except it is all traced back to anti-blackness, which is the reason why we do the best of the most world. They did not make a permutation in this case. You do not like the one allocated away that the negative black strategy was predicated on the 2AC. Now finally, this argument, this framing issue does not occur because we actually analyze the violence going on. Now they read this piece of evidence about the overconfidence scenario, so we don't link to this argument or any of the arguments on Asian Americans. We acknowledge that Asian American identity is fluid. All the cards in the context of using a static Asian American identity and homogenizing. That is the model minority myth, and we call that myth for a reason because the process of consolidation, the process of internally self-reflecting, and knowing who we are in the world. We have been given this identity and we reject it. It's the reason why our performer solves the argument. She says that it doesn't solve the case. First argument is that we don't need to solve the case because we turn the case. The Congress has to go. Bernard's evidence says that the reason these people are killed is because of their worthlessness in terms of race. And also, the piece of sophomore evidence is alternate sovereignty because it says that counter-narratives, educational, economic participation, that vote critically reflects and accounts for our own positionalities, complicities, and the ethical political choices are crucial if the discursive terrain neoliberal rationalized come to be normalized, effective, remain, which is the reason why oppression and the oppression that you cause is what feeds these type of neoliberal things, which is the reason why they don't solve the case and only alternatives. When women die in alternative, you cannot do anything by holding institutions accountable. That is far least justified. The movement of slave in the U.S. segment, the U.S. movement of slave percent all over and why over the black, the same percent of slave lives out, the slave economics and possible reconciliation of its freedom of freedom by believing self-liberty, the slave violence when it prays for legal rights, only after legal equality in the state, perfection of slave, the dream of equality hierarchy, the pray for legal rights to slavery, slavery is that, the pray for legal rights to slave, perfect moment. Now, the second argument, institutions will answer by this, the ethical refusal is critical if you want to approach institutions. Martin knows why counter-ethics can only ethics refuse these structures show themselves a crime. There's nothing they can do that could be considered crime and rejection. Nothing the government does domestic foreign policy should be pointed on this reason. So many open discussion. We have to decide on the national asylum and creating alternative political structure. This means to replace ethics going government and thus granting a credence with the establishment of citizens and autonomy jobs to pull more and more people away from this war of government. Government. Now, the next argument is about the factors of the Asian identity. We don't link to this argument either because it specifically says that we are essentializing the term Asian Americans. Just using the term Asian Americans, not essentializing because some Asian Americans, this has been given to Asian Americans. Given that do not identify Asian Americans, we have been identified as Asian American, which is the difference. The reason why we don't link to the argument. They say personal narratives matter. I'm going to impact on the crap out of this argument. The piece of Judy evidence specifically does not give any words by personal narratives matter. She says that identity is always forming. We agree with that part of the identity forming through the constellation and interlocale. We agree that identity is always forming, except even if, which is the reason why the OCD emphasizes that for identity to form properly, we must share these experiences with other people in the world and go through a private self-reflection. Even if it's not, it has to be explicit within context of round. Because if it's not, that means that no one else acknowledges it and you are still doing it. If you don't come to grips with your own oppression, that's the more evidence says. That means that will poison your performance and cause your reflection to become bad. The fully you know yourself argument is absolutely not impacted because just as that people's feelings get hurt, even if people's feelings get hurt, that is a process of self-reflection and you know what you did wrong, which is the reason why a politics of uncomfortability should be performed in the context of this debate. Now she says that we have a constant body, except this constant body in the context of Asian Americans don't link because all of the analysis are in Asian Americans, not just one body. The experiences are not all the same, which is why the process of contradiction is internal and different. Now she said that the white sees a break in civil society in 2016. This is a tricky attempt to try and get out of the links. She said even if the card civil society, the white sees performance did not rupture civil society because they're not talking about the racial relations. Extend the Crenshaw evidence right here. When you don't talk about the implications of race and the ontology of blackness will come fundamentally in civil society, you cannot tear it down because that's how civil society gains coherence. The affirmative things that they're trying to make civil society equated, except it does absolutely jack shit when you don't acknowledge those intersections of race in the civil society in the context of code. Now she said that identity politics kills coalitions. First of all, those coalitions are bad because of intersectionality. The piece of Crenshaw evidence and the piece of more evidence specifically says that these type of coalitions of intersection fail when people do it. They don't just use if you don't acknowledge your own privilege, they'll just use that as an excuse to talk about whatever you want. And questions of race always get pushed back to the background. Reason why those are bad. And finally, they're focused on neoliberalism. All terror makes it so that they don't solve anything. The one stage race neutral wants to economic relation recreates neoliberalism. Wired in 2007. The rhetoric of colorblindness negates relation with the racial difference of power. The common use as a pretext to justify higher racial difference. To mark ideology, ignores the way racializing and post-family facts. Neoliberal proposals represent America's racial content and whiteness. The new left family political class will likely racializing America without reform addressing class discrimination by the way race reform nations are only still unequal but discriminatory. Racial history acute power of the way of whiteness. This only occurs by the virtue of superficial analysis. When the white market approach offers this the benefits of constant incident racial domain, legitimizing in America that America has achieved a level playing field. This ideological standpoint leaves whites at least free and clear of solving that super responsibility. Not only critical race theory can center the struggle against neoliberalism. Awarded 2007, it is important to engage in critical race methodology, social philosophy, colorblind view, colorblind protection, north of impact, social programs as an identity of all social members of social notes of race categories used to continue to justify racial discrimination. Decision on one effective process with effect on all domains. Given the TOC views racial as another problem of the government, they help explain why racial is affected and taking granted. Now we must focus on neoliberalism, how it's fundamentally racist. Robertson behind these people saying it's important to analyze the process with neoliberalism counter the utilization of little lasting moments of eruption of racial discrimination with neoliberalism, including racial asset focusing on neoliberalism. To understand the way neoliberalism views the way scholarship needs to do more than by popular response to neoliberalism, racial roles, and instead focus on the way that neoliberalism is fundamentally race. Now the military metaphor argues there is no link because we did not read that piece of OCG evidence. Also the second argument said there is no impact to the military metaphors argument just because it makes the Asian positionality different. That's not how me and Gabe identify it the constant way. I told you the process of consternation is constant clarification. Guess what the word constant means? It means it's always changing. The piece of argument about the black feminism. First of all, the Willis evidence back because the black body is the evidence of the flesh. We agree that the positionality of the black female and the black male is different, and that's why we do the part about the self-reflection because it's not all common. Just because everyone marks life does not mean that they all go through the same experiences, and we acknowledge that through the process of consolidation. Now, the final argument about how identity hasn't pre-fetched yet is not responsive because the piece of more evidence says that identifying yourself with others helps your identity form because it makes it so that you don't do the oppression yourself, which is the reason why we're the only ones that impacts and they don't solve anything. Yeah, I'm good.
How exactly does critical race theory solve neoliberalism?
Because critical race theory, neoliberalism is built upon critical race theory. The idea that there's always this equal playing field was grounded upon the idea.
Where did the 1AC say there was everybody's on an equal playing field in some
The 1AC didn't say that. I was answering your previous question about critical race theory shaped neoliberalism. So the idea that there was an equal playing field, how neoliberalism perpetuates itself, was started by the concept of racism. Because for there to be this equal playing field, there had to be identities that are marked as non-human within the context of society.
If it doesn't link to the app.
It's a turns case argument for the app.
Well, but you just said we didn't say everything started on an equal playing field.
I said once you break down the notions of race, that will break down notions of neoliberalism.
All right.
Neoliberalism was
You read
founded on
a
race.
piece of evidence about why coalitions will always fail. If this is true, how can you prioritize both Asian conscientization and acknowledging the privilege of the white subject in the context of the black woman?
First, acknowledging the privilege of the white subject, your job. Second, we acknowledge the privilege of how Asian Americans have been used as tools for anti-blackness. That performance ties stuff together, and it's not a coalition.
Wait, how have Asian Americans been used as a tool for anti-blackness?
See, this is where you misunderstand the entire 1MC. The piece of Tang evidence says that the Asian American model minority myth has been used to perpetuate the black culture of poverty because it was as this foil that white supremacy uses. The reason this is perpetuated is because Asian Americans believe and feed into it, which is what the Chang evidence talks about. It assumed norm in Asian communities that they are this model minority.
I'm asking how you can solve for this argument when you have read a piece of Willerson evidence that specifically says coalitions can never be made in the context of the black body.
No. The argument says coalitions cannot be made unless it focuses on anti-blackness.
Alright.
Our performance
I'm also
of Asian
confused
personality
with the
relates to
idea of
anti-blackness.
self-reflexivity. How are you self-reflexive in the context of your privilege over the black body?
Conscientization and the articulation that we agree that the model minority is a myth and rejected. That was the one.
You talking about the model minority, why does that have anything to do with your privilege in the context
Because the
of the
reason
black
that
body?
this privilege exists because Asian Americans believe in the model minority myth. That's the piece of Chang evidence.
You're still not answering my question.
I just said the reason why this privilege exists is because Asians believe in the model minority myth. Gabe and I explicitly disavow that myth, which breaks down the system, or helps break down the system of anti-blackness by acknowledging our complicity in it.
Okay. How should one come to grips with their own oppression?
That's your job and how you need to self-reflect on how
Yes,
you're
how
done.
should that self-reflection happen?
It should start with, wait, I don't know how you have done oppressive things, so that's a question you should be answering. Just the fact that you didn't do it explicitly is what I think arguments are based on.
So how does the like connect on that at all?
Okay, so I'm trying to flash this right now, but it seems to not be saying it.
That's cool.
Hashtag paper.
So excited that the one I see on paper is like done electronically.
So yours works.
Can I get the paper one I see back since you have it electronically? Thank you.
Species there.
The one in R.
Yeah.
So I'm good.
Yeah.
Oh. I thought he was doing that on his flash drive. Is Gabe also flashing us something?
Yeah. Lord snap.
Can you combine them?
Are these distinct files?
Huh?
Wait, what?
What's going on over there? I just want to know.
I'm also lost now.
Do you have the flash drive?
This flash drive?
Yeah.
Does this have the one in R on it?
Yeah.
What are you flashing us?
Oh, I was gonna put it on this flash drive to give you a copy so that there's 2 flash drives to make it faster.
Oh.
I know.
That makes no sense.
Faster.
Yeah, but now my paperwork doesn't have to be responded. Give me that flash drive too. I might need that back.
I thought this was the one in R.
Yeah, the one in ours on there.
Okay, so you need. Okay. Yeah.
No, my like. Like we're gonna need it. Let's leave off on it.
Just let us know.
Wait, why? What's not responding?
Which DOs to go?
If it's not responding, just close out all your work and restart it.
Yeah, you can we do that?
Programs without money.
It's gonna be the case.
Well, I think this computer's not working. Can we wait for work to
It already is.
Here.
Access.
Yeah, I'm the one in R.
Yeah, I know, but I still need your card.
Good, then you get this your computer.
Put it on this one. Let's get through that, yeah.
That works. What the?
Whoa. It flips. It's text, like.
Give me that flip.
Do you want a mouse?
No, I don't. Oh, yeah.
Alright, we'll do.
Look at that.
Never mind. I'll do it.
Good job, Carter.
This case.
You don't need it? Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Ready?
Case?
Yeah, just case. The act is pretty sketchy about what they do. They embrace a speculative, tell a fictional story while they ignore the actual and neoliberals and trap that happens down in water. This is a high theory crap that just justify ignoring the gender or racial violence just because we believe that reading a story can somehow resolve the issue. Now we believe the judge should vote for who best methodology before for liberals and practical reading a story outside of neoliberalism doesn't do anything to KO it because when you're out on the street reading a story about neoliberalism doesn't get you prevent you from getting shot. Now the KO operates outside the Uber rides. There is an identity that is a derelict of society. As long as we win the conflict, that the YMCA cannot stop for the fungibility of the slave like they claim to do. Their logic is one of the arbor because they assume that reading a story it's all for the violence. The case turns this because the black body implicates the Afro multiple issue and the alt is unpledged paradigm which is more rational. Now Peterson evidence says nothing. We have conceived the story. The act cannot embrace it factor because they are just in a debate. We're reading a story that the argument is turned by the ongoing death of the black body. We also critique the specter they are using. Now you do link it to Juarez representation. Your fictional area is based off the femicide in Juarez. Think about it. You can't embrace a specter when we critique the allegory. Don't let them confuse you. Santa Teresa is based off the femicide of Juarez like they have said before. Now I'm gonna read you some lines from their story. Esperanza had been strangled to death. She had been stabbed to death. The next Monday in May, a dead woman was found in the Dublin street. Her own quote from the tweet was the YMCA resolves to engage Santa Teresa reveals the extent which Maquiladora murders haunt us in the permanent reality. While we are critiquing the use of Maquiladora murders because that is based on the horror. The femicide representation of women are killed because sexualized representation of horrors. However, this is just a textual reproduction of misogyny. This complicates the ability of the afterself when there is a paradox with economic empowerment in the Maquiladora. In reality, studies show that the percent of women murdered women in Maquiladoras are quite small. The textual representation reinforces images feminine helplessness by showing them as disempowered. This can also be traced to keeping the woman in her proper place in Mexican society by scaring them away to workplace and keeping them in the homes. That's the Martinez evidence. Now the second Martinez evidence, the purpose of terrorism, disallowing any female representation beyond patriarchy. The image of border woman enjoying economic power is a daring step outside of stereotypical victims. There is no room for Centennial standard where women are free from fear and fear, and that the characterization of women and horrors as victims as a significant factor in the becoming causality, casualties, and femicide. The portrayal that falls in a vicious circle, denigration of women. That Martinez is a female Spanish professor at Michigan State University analyzes the language. You should prefer we can win this as a standalone argument. We can agree with the rest of the case as we win this as a reason to reject the after. It's not true. If it's not true, then the after keep on dodging the bullets we shoot at them, which is integral to the story. Not the anti-argument extended. Getting to that you don't have to give out an autobiography, but you should acknowledge your privilege before you prescribe a solution for all of us, such as reading a spectrum, endorsing the Uber rights. They are complicit with the white savior complex, rushing in to save the third world woman, not forward grounding the voices settled in 14. We are taught to be a pitiable woman living on the place. The core message are culture better, more like rational, civilized. All the culture should strive to be more like a self person in the wrong way. Only one folks understand how to system the oppression travel far out of land to bring the far out truth of the people. We assume that we will bring wonderful life-changing revolution of these people. Hopefully, they say the woman. This is about agency. Before we do anything else, the most important work is to listen to marginalized people. Any work of freeing a woman, co-lotus and hatred of white folks to rescue by considering them how they're rushing in to rescue the feminist group of free Muslim women. Muslim women felt their voices were being co-opted. What's what a feminist escape from to be stumbling the examination of our own privilege, our white privilege, color, perception, and hurts other people when our intentions go our action came out. This turns the case there. To result the suffering of the other is just a way to incorporate the passive victims into full enlightenment ideals. It's an AR and 12 and 4 all over efforts from the Western rational substance itself from to one invest in the powers to judge the other colonial ontology and suffering and born out of philosophical imperialism. We assume the right to define the human condition from the colonial ontology itself, and the other is problem itself. The other is not to know the colonial orientation, salvation, or pursuit. The order is derived from the alignment of darkness into alignment. The other is brought into totality, the same of suffering. Other to use our voice is useless. Now she says she is able to resolve some of these impacts, such as specificity and passivity. However, to reading tools does not. We will say that leads to complicity because you can just be like, oh, I read a story and now I'm not complicit in the violence. Now, also the victimization, the efforts and harm done to workers instead of the agency constructs them as passive victims. This is all the war's representations of the argument. This is 188. Women as categories and now said Western feminist is discord for woman in the third world construct the third world woman is homogenous partly scripture located implicit basically the mode of defining women primarily in the terms of object exactly in which way they are affected into the system characterized in particular form the use of women is concept of Western woman writing by the woman in the third world such as objectivity the most change until basically if you cannot know what you are solving for what you are embracing what you are inspector then you cannot vote for the impact of the 180 because we have provided a real world that materialistic violence that you should be asking the objective to solve for.
The argument about 26 is confrontation privilege is not true because it's talking about other readers who thought about their privilege made explicit.
The 2066 story does not mean that they are confronting their privilege because the reading story is about other readers interpreting their privilege when they read the story in 1AC. Nowhere did Jaren come out and say that I am a white male, that I am complicit with the system, patriarchy, identify himself or acknowledge his privilege. This links to a more car on the critique where you have to first identify yourself in the intersection before you can do any specter. We are critiquing the specter they are using. So even if you embrace it, we say that specter has been based off of bad representations, which therefore you cannot vote affirmative.
742.
Where'd you get the laptop track?
Right past the bathroom.
Let's go.
Is there anything that was marked in here that you need?
I don't think I unlocked it.
No one takes it out.
Are they done in there?
They're having the RFD, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me do.
Uh,
There's somewhere. Yeah.
That's not the one that does.
You're right.
What's this say, guys?
Mohanty?
And it's not supposed to be highlighted, right?
Everything was red underlined.
Yeah. Everything. I read all of the underline.
Stop at 320. Smooth. Yeah.
Not much to talk about. Spell TOC.
Only works for written.
What's on the other side of those doors?
Construction. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, but
like,
Yeah, like tried to walk out there. She's like,
We're
oh,
getting like a
okay.
whole breeze from here.
Yeah, fair. Doesn't sound too loud.
I think the RFB and PF debate is taking longer than the round did.
So like what, 20 minutes then?
Yeah. It sounds like a policy
kabuki theater across pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. They gave RFPs out there already.
That would be nice. It's pretty cold out there.
Yeah.
That room's like 10 degrees colder.
I know. And bigger, and they have water. And, yeah.
Alrighty, the order is case and then the critique. Cool. Yeah, critique starting with the critique in 2 and C order. Cool. Legend. You two coup?
Yep.
Why not?
See what you did there.
Every time. Leonardo was the only one who heard it the first time, so people coming in and out. Can you close the door if you're not coming in? Thank you. Oh. Well, okay. Okay, like talk. Okay.
The framing show the case debates that can see the last piece of Peterson evidence a way that the fictional reading of Santa Teresa can only ensure the responsibility through the morning, because there's not a visible spectre, there's not a visible body to be able to have this fungibility on turns. All of the fungibility argument morning is a tracing of the genealogy. This means we're going to be able to resolve any of the offense on this way. There's not a reason given in the 1 hour why they're able to remove themselves from the horizon and take themselves out of the entanglement. It means they cannot go for any of these root cause arguments. Rather, we must have the entanglement includes all of the uber rise of death, rather than just looking at race or just looking at the way that model minority affects within those things, because ignoring that means that we render other forms of repression invisible. When we allow for those to recreate themselves, means that that's offensive reason to reject all of the framing that they're going for. It's only a question of whether or not you default to an overrism that already includes an understanding of race and minorities. Can frame the rest of the critique debate. They see that a question of they make this argument about the real life versus ivory tower. Nothing about their analysis does anything to change real life. It's a question about narrating a time and place outside of neoliberalism and allowing these women the time that they are denied death themselves because we refuse to engage the death, because it's seen as something that's not talked about. They see the fictional area is based on, but rather the links are based off of all their links about the women. The value of the allegory is that these are not specific women, rather the ability to do this. Also, all of these links are ridiculous when they have obviously not read any of the evidence or the narratives that I read from the 2016, because only some of them from the Macadura. Other ones talk about the way that just the intersection within Santa Teresa that are external to the Macadura recreate these kinds of issues means that just talking about the Macadura is not going to come about with this. They ignore the what is just about this, don't commit the victimization markets, not making sense, because they did not decide that socially dead right now is conceded war, means they cannot go for the argument. See the Yancey evidence for the you link back to Yancey, you don't knowledge your own seconds, they extend the Butler personal narrative coherence for close notability to hold a personal account for the life of falsification that face the point they can never truly know. The extent of the privilege to boost personal narratives, he'll be some point for violence opposite others. The eyes therefore creating nervously. Threes, no one people confess they no one people confess that they're thinking of three of the now the 2066 has unique value. The dramatized regularity forces an internal reflection of the way that we do not have that within our lives. Forces look at that now rather than the alternative method. They do not provide a method to resolve the NCF, so only the tracing of the rhizome to understand a better method to reveal the trace the whiteness, class, and gender. All of those lead back to method, but they have no method to be able to resolve those things. But the tracings that prerequisite to all of those arguments, they say the complicity the same applies to the alternative, because they do not have anything to be able to resolve this. They makes women passive. First of all, it links back to the critique of passivity. Now the critique, because they also create that is also about removing from neoliberalism because they're denied that also we confronted that sequencing issue explained above. Critique overview. There were two links in the block that cannot go for anything else than two. The first was the link of omission about race. First of all, it's wrong about the we read a lot of evidence in the 2060s about the way that diaspora is affected. The idea that there are lighter and darker, there are different shades of Hispanic, there are different shades of blackness within context of Macadoras means that they are the only ones who are omitting the distinction that exists within the critical race ability to do those. It's also the Renaissance that talks about the way that the darkness as well as the gender as well as class all come into the ability to do those things. They can't go for a link of omission when they want to see explicitly talks about the way that the entanglement includes race. You can call for the evidence. Maybe they didn't read it because it was on paper. That's really difficult for them. They should look at those. And the second link that was new in the block was reform the state argument. First of all, responsibility, forcing responsibility is impossible. They assume that we are having something the USFG do something that can actually do that as the aporia argument that was conceded in the block. Santa Teresa is fictional, trying to make the USFG resolve economic engagement. It shows the flaws within civil society, breaks open that kind of costs. Also, we're not saying the US can be resolved. Rather, reform rather than not going to be able to extend the Ashley Marx to evidence. The agro-pessimistic authors are theoretically underdeveloped. Excessive focus connections to possibility precludes engagement with neoliberalism. Fails to enact effective undergirding or interpretation of Bolaño's dystopian uncertainty civil society by spreading the fictions of civil society. They can see the role of the ballot. Once again, it's only a question of narrating a time and place outside of neoliberalism. The fact that he still exists within neoliberal time because they have chosen to focus on the real the concept that they're able to focus on means that they're not going to be able to see unethical force of responsibility. It's impossible. Now the argument about the impact of the rhizome, the diaspora distinction, but the ontology fails assumes a knowledge for all these arguments. The pack evidence is a link to a racial or source-added understanding of identity. When they assume the body to identify what it means to be Asian American leads the epistemology of self-evidence, assuming Asian American exists unmediated, is used to resolve all anxiety by the Asian American substance impacted out by the second piece of pack evidence. Asian America is used as false signifier of unity to silence specific subjectivity outside. There's a policing this and that. Any interpretation of Asian American that are not what the Coup brothers say means that they cannot go for these arguments. This is proven by the fact that they use in this critique of Osajima's understanding, which means that the process that they have endorsed. Also, the second was the militarism. When he uses metaphors of militarism, things like replenishing the ranks, that makes it so they're in opposition to other positionalities, and they're able to have this incorporation. They're discussing ability to access any these elements, the fungibility argument. So this makes no sense with special critique. I'll talk about how ontology as knowable is impossible. It means that not being able to go for the only ability to state that more of 26 requires the engagement. Alternative is an unflinching analysis of one portion of the root. The rhizomatic often they concede. It means they're not going to be able to solve the invisible principle in the case to make their argument about the no permutation question. That because we have assumed that argument ability to access those things, the why the rhizome was understanding the aporia turns all their credience arguments are not going to be able to access any of those 26 forces. They reflection. We concede and when evidence talks about the way that 2066 and regularity forces us to always think about our own privilege and always be able to focus on our own identity. It means that it's not necessary with any that the reading of that wasn't one sufficient to be able to do. The Redox evidence talks about the ability for the diaspora to explain things.
I have 504 right there.
You have 5.
Is the overview going to precede the rest of the K debate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just 1 second. This is my case. This is my 1 second. That's second case page. That's case page. Good. Anybody not ready? Okay. It is hard for the affirmative to win when they don't extend the impact into 1 yard. Do not let it 2 do this. Protect it 2 because I don't get 3 yards to answer these arguments. Do not evaluate any 2 arguments unless you explicitly trace them back to the 1 yard. The case only thing with an impact you say I've dropped the framing issue. You should only evaluate impacts that you can solve within this route, which is the reason why self-election can give out knowledge that we are myth of the mind. Those impacts are dropped. The psychological violence against Asian Americans is a material form of violence to Asian spirits. When we disavow the myth of the mind, know that is true. It's also solves the resentment between migrant groups, which is the reason why we solve the intersection of time that they solve. We operate within their role of the ballot because we're saying that this myth of time exists outside temporality. We interrogate history through the process of self-reflection, which is the reason why we self-see the role of bad. Except you have not answered that role of bad. Performatively, methodology, the press group, you do not have any method, and your performance is bad as will be proven on the case page. Also, all the third case arguments were conceded. Wilson Evans said that your neoliberal discourse was only possible because of the fundability of the slave. This type of capitalism, the idea that we're on an equal playing field, are all based off racial discrimination, because the word evidence indicates that in history, the only reason why the idea of an equal playing field could become about is that some ideas have to be devalued to the point of zero, so that they will not internally contradict the myth of the mind, feed this myth, and oppose neoliberalism, which is another turn case argument, because if we break down the myth of the mind, that means that white supremacy can now pretend that there is no problem coming in status quo. Now the link arguments, all the answers to link emissions were new in the 1 year, rejected because of negative, like explicitly pointed out. The crunch evidence still applies, because just saying the word race is not enough. You need to actually interrogate race. The YC has been race 2 times, and once in attack and once in cut, but do not interrogate how the race has shaped the forms of neoliberalism, or led to this, and dare never does that, which is the reason why you seem like white supremacy assume that the state links are a little bit more nuanced. When you assume that institutions have power, aka when you say that the sheriff has the fault and the power to create disaster, you are ceding your agency through these institutions with the following evidence to saying, which is a reason why you review your own agency. That's a piece of modern no evidence, which is another link. Also, the other arguments that they don't have a permutations code. I don't know what link defense is going to get to do. As long as we waive 1% of the risk on the criticism, that means that our impacts still away. The role of valid arguments, we are time outside of place. The ontology of African American are still engaging neoliberalism. Another drop in the link in terms of case arguments that the black body is not fluid. They cannot escape the time because there is a material reality that they face when someone's being approached by a cop for racial profiling. They can't be like, oh, I guess this is not time to get away from that. That is material violence occurring in the real world that the affirmative does absolutely jack shit about the race. The arguments about the Asian terms don't link up on it, because you have to have all analysis about, oh, this is a personal process of self-election. Even if you're critiquing Osajima, you are not critiquing our performance, because we are not using the same method, the same way that Osajima did. This is our own process, and you have dropped all the arguments about the more evidence saying that helps us become better people because we stop the oppression. You have also dropped the argument that if you don't confront self-privilege, that causes you to be oppressive because there is still a piece of oppression. This is especially true in the context of intersection, because when you try to analyze race, clan, and death, but don't realize about how you contribute to it, that causes these to happen. The ontology false arguments are substituted by the Willis evidence, because it says that the black body is ontologically dead. They don't offer a counter history to the middle passage, which is the reason why you cannot actually evaluate their arguments in the cognitive space. Now the case arguments are problematic. The framing arguments make no sense, because we are still, you have to concede the current case argument. He says that we make other forms of violence invisible, except that is not true, because we have acknowledged how anti-black violence structures everything. The myth of the environment structured by anti-blackness, the forms of neoliberalism are structured by anti-blackness. These are all specific arguments that he cannot beat down with a generic extension of how we make other things invisible. Now finally, the discussion turns to your performance versus the Juarez K. You are really messing up here, because our K was not just about Juarez, even if it was tagged as Juarez. It was a K of femicide representations by McIntosh in general. Guess what Santa Barbara was based on? Freaking Juarez. That's what it was based on. The Martinez evidence independently couldn't kill their performance, because it is an internal link turn to all your femicide arguments, even though you didn't extend them into 1AR. The textual reproduction of the woman to be seen as victim is violent and bad, because the women working McIntosh is actually economically in power. You have to drop the argument that the study proves that there are actually not that many women being killed in McIntosh right now, which proves that we have impact even to their argument. Except when you portray them as being victims, that gets rid of their economic power, because it relegates women back into the home, because they're going to be these victims. These pair really well with the white savior arguments that they have dropped, because they are just acting as white saviors trying to do it, which automatically which kills her performance ability to solve, because it proves that the white savior is only doing it for their own good. Unless they have a politics discomfortability, that means that you will see yourself as a white savior and absolve yourself of your own guilt, which is the reason why you will continue to feed oppression in this status quo. Now, you try to, this is a direct confrontation to a patriarchal idea of domesticity. The Martinez evidence says that even in spaces like the US, when you use these reputations, that is what causes it. Now, finally, the Yancey arguments. This is not what you have to disclose your personal experience and cry about your privilege, but you should acknowledge your identity where you speak from. Before you say reading a story is able to solve for violence, you link the Yancey because Yancey creates a white philosopher who claims that he solves things like the black body. These are escape the solution that cannot resolve anything. Butler Emerson did conscious of autobiography. That's not Yancey's. That confession is just an knowledge of favor. This is despicable because they sit comfortably in the hotel reading the stories of human parts without saying how it's effective or how they have caused some of that suffering in the first place. This is what creates white statement of the metallic which are extended. It also turns the case because you cannot claim to break down the uber rhizome when you feed the rhizome at the same time. Extend the native evidence. They make women the rational logic. People having vengeance. If we prove that their interrogation of the rhizome starts in a bad place, their solvency for the rhizome is very wrong, and you can only prefer the material violence that they perpetuate and don't come to grips with.
Good point.
My water. Would you like me to refill yours?
Yeah. Yancey's all good for the identifying methods, but how we recognize our own only by starting after the rhizome, can we then trace those back
values who best there is a place and time outside neoliberalism. And I'll address the links here. The one they said is the link of omission, but 1, 266, she describes these sheets of blackness within Santa Teresa. There is a distinction made with specifically within the narrative. There's a reason why we don't link to this. The second argument the one are made was the Renard's evidence that the Renard's evidence specifically said the intertanglement between gender, race, and class. All of these reasons are the reason why we're specifically not link of omission. Now 3, these trends, them join for the Crenshaw evidence is just an answer to this because 1, it's in the context of second wave feminism, in the context of why white feminists reject the concept of racism. That obviously isn't the affirmative when we're talking about the within the field doors and these within the Santa Teresa restaurant. Now the next is the reforming state arguments. We the impact turn this with the Farrar evidence. Holding the state responsible is good, even though we know it's impossible for them to fully come to grips with their understanding. It makes us acknowledge what the state does. Now the alternative fails to do this. They've been pretty explicit that they do not want to acknowledge the state in any of the arguments. That's the reason why rhizomatic engagement is the best to solve that, because through the Emporia we can actually understand why the state is complicit within neoliberalism. Understanding our own quote-unquote own privilege does nothing to understand how the state is a cause of what creates that oppression in the first place. If we don't understand like oppressive structures, there's no reason why we can understand how to best overcome those in the end. The second is the drop the shell argument that the Afro-pessimistic authors are theoretically underdeveloped because excessive focus on conditions of possibility precludes the engagement with neoliberalism, fails to enact an effective resistance undergirding their interpretation. The 266 dystopia usurps civil society by funding issues of failure. We have specifically said within the 1 through 266 the reason why we all beings do not operate on the same functionality of love. That's why we need to acknowledge the spectrum because it supersedes the idea of the subject-object binary. We are not, so that means we don't link to any of the ontology arguments that they are trying to go for. Now they say root cause, this is our present thinking, which links back to the reason why the rhizomatic thought is the only way to effectively intangible. There is no possibility to slay because the spectrum arguments supersede the idea of the subject-object positions in the first place. You covered.
Yep.
Also, on the Asian today, they say the firm of fluid understanding of Asian American identity doesn't get them out of the decay of Otsujima, the author whose process they endorse. Also, can't get out of the link when they made a point of saying you can't delete from your discourse and discourse of your authors. Call for the Otsujima evidence because it is the entire article. He starts with the unique subjectivity of Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, but ends with the unifying representation of Asian American as external disadvantage to the alternative. And a reason why they can never solve because they are seeing the Asian American as one unique being. Saying that one unique being means we can never actually identify our understanding of our privilege because we can never understand the different complexes of the entanglement of the rise on the link is the erasure of historical understanding of identity when they assume the body to be the identifier. What it means to be Asian American, at least to epistemology of self-evidence is a policing dissent that they drop in order to defend the unity of the Asian American. All those who claim that Centennial has chosen to repressively violently police the love of representation and expression external to that representation inherently disingenuous, rejected from the unity of the Asian American subjectivity. The choice becomes supports erasure of a unique history or forcing solution. Those experiences of those homage descent is different from those with Korean descent as well as those from Filipino descent. Now onto the case made extending Peterson evidence through fiction responsibility to morning traces genealogy. The maquiladora is the ultimate who was derived from death. That means to reject them. You have to you have yet to provide a method to how to understand our privilege. Only through entanglement can we solve anything. You can choose to drop the impact turn this argument, which is the Butler evidence. The extending Butler evidence that personal narrative coherence forecloses no ability to hold a person accountable for their life requires a falsification of their life because no one can truly ever understand their own privilege. Talking about it in a linear time and place, the is the reason why only the alternative solves because we can never fully know our privilege. The A, they can prove that personal narrative is there, and B, the force of violence onto the self. The I is there for creating a narrative to receiving other. This is a sentence of policing telling them about, hey, this is the privilege I experience and that's why I am more important than you. And trace off with any of the fact that they think that they can go for a collisions argument, and when people they confess they think that they are free of their privilege and washes it away only through entanglement can we acknowledge the specter haunts us and understand the genealogical tracing of that and answer the victimization, the entirety of the femicide replicators underdeveloped in the 2 and R when they fail to come to grips with a single 1 AR framing issues, not just the women working in maquiladores, which is defensive framing issue, women in the slums outside of nowhere, violence coming through all subject to the uberism, the self-subjective question of large impact around which they are the denial of time and death and it's not the women are killed but they are always already dead. This is the social death impact that makes the nemesis impact of victimization turns down. This is only question of a preferable method. The white savior K doesn't get the very bottom. They can see the solvency given to the new Janet Broad demonstrating the entanglements within the Roper-Rides of death. Now you link back to the Yancey evidence. You're not acknowledging your own privilege within the debate round. It proves the arbitrariness of the alternative and all the Butler analysis. The reason why the Yancey evidence doesn't make any sense because
Tracing entanglements is the best method.
Tracing entanglements is the best method to understand civil
understand privilege.
Understand privilege and understanding civil society. You must question the oppressive structures in order to fully acknowledge, one, your privilege, or two, to solve everything.
I'd like to needs to be here.
Seems that way.
Sweet. Congratulations, everyone, on reaching Monday at the TOC. The decision is a 2-1 for the negative from Centennial.
Alright, I sat. I think there are a couple of things that caused me to see this debate differently than the other two judges, and one of those is that I think that the 2NR's choice to emphasize the impact debate is the wrong strategic decision. I think that in a debate where, yes, they don't have a permutation, but all they are going for is link turns, they don't need to win an external impact to the case in order to win the debate. They just need to win that they access a link turn to one of the couple of arguments that you're extending in the 2NR. And I think that the way that they do that is the 2AR's explanation of the AF's hauntology and the AF's notion of entanglement is something that complicates your discussion of privilege and your discussion of the Yancey evidence that I think isn't refuted particularly well. A lot of this development does seem a little new in the 2AR, but I think that there's a significant basis for it in the 1AR, and as well as the 2AC's explanation of the AF, because the AF has been forwarding one argument consistently that I think allows them to access this, and that's that it is good to hold the state responsible for its crimes, even if it's impossible to do so. And in fact, the explanation of the aporia argument is that it is impossible to do so, but that the use of fiction, and I think that part of the 1AC that really resonates with me in this explanation is the story about the cop who finds the dead body's woman, and he's like, I have to hold you responsible. And the point of the AF is that there's no way to hold any particular corporeal body responsible, and I think that the lack of depth on the negs analysis on the Peterson evidence that the AF is reading is it doesn't serve you well here, because the way that the AF is explaining responsibility is that it ought to be impossibly diffused amongst the subjects of neoliberal American society, so that there's no one particular easy way to resolve that responsibility. And the point of that impossibility is that that privilege of existing in that neoliberal society haunts all subjects constantly, as opposed to being something that we can resolve through conscientization. And I think that there are a couple of ways you can deal with this, but that one of those has to be a much more offensive explanation of conscientization that is more exclusive with the AF. Because the AF's argument about fiction and what the Peterson evidence as well as the Butler evidence is saying about that encounter with fiction is that breakage from analyzing the actual Juarez allows us, that breakage from analyzing an actual Juarez sort of allows us to say that there is no one progenitor of all oppression. Or that, I suppose beyond that there's no one political entity that can be held responsible in order to produce a solvent political method. And so I end up voting on the link turn to this Yancey argument, but I think that one thing that really swung me in this direction, because I wasn't entirely convinced by that argument alone, given some of the newness of it. I think that what swung me in the AF's direction was that there isn't any 2NR ink on this Osajima argument, and I think that I don't think any of your cards are using, any of these Osajima cards are using rhetoric that is necessarily militant, which is why I don't think you should lose on this argument at all. But I think that if you explain in the 2NR a little better how the notion of replenishing the ranks is not something that necessitates a relationship between differential positionalities or identities that is necessarily like warring or violent, that it allows you to get out of that. But I think that because you don't have a particularly good answer to it, that the AF can get away with kind of just being like, in 1AC Cross-X, you made this huge deal about discourse and holding people to the words that they say, and that if you don't refute how they're characterizing your evidence, that they can kind of get away with murder. And so I think that if you play a little more defense on this, that you probably win the debate. But because the Yancey argument alone is not enough. But I think that because they've internal link turned all of the Yancey arguments you were ahead on in the block in the 1AR, and because you've conceded that particular argument, that you're just a little behind, and that they win some of the link turns to the civil society link argument. Now, the link of omission argument, I think that a lot of the like equal playing field analysis in the 2NR and all of the diaspora analysis and like the differential blackness within maquiladoras, and it's not getting you anywhere. What does this debate turn into? Like, you're creating a historical analysis, you're creating an analysis of a maquiladora, but they're never conflicting with each other. You're not finding points of connection between the two where you can draw distinctions between how each team is describing the world. Your argument is equal playing field notions come from racism as opposed to just emerging out of capitalism. And I also think that it would be useful if there was a discussion in this debate about the difference between capitalism and neoliberalism, because neoliberalism did not emerge in Europe out of ideas of like Enlightenment racism, but neoliberalism is a more modern manifestation of capitalism. And so when they define neoliberalism and cross-ex as equal playing field, you should disagree, because that's not what the definition of neoliberalism is. That is an ideal that is contained within capitalism that might be within neoliberalism, but it certainly doesn't describe the like genesis or emergence of neoliberalism, which could be something that you can sort of debate the root cause on. But in a debate where at the top of the 2NR you're like, you cannot evaluate an impact argument that is not coupled with a solvency mechanism, I think that making all these root cause arguments doesn't help you as much as making a much more clear explanation of how alt solvency solves the entire AF. But your link argument needs to be that the AF's entanglement mystifies paradigm. The AF wants to create confusion. The point of the AF is to be like all oppressive structures are entangled with each other impossibly, and because we can never produce total responsibility to a particular body, that we have to diffuse it everywhere. And your point is like, that's colorblind as shit. Like, but I think that you need a better analysis of that, and couple the 2NR with more of like an alt solvency. They don't have a permutation argument. In a debate where they don't have a perm and all they're going for is link turns, you need an alt solves the AF argument, and then you just need to spend time on one link for the entire 2NR and extend a small impact argument.
Shall I go first, or would you care to?
Oh, no, it's up to you.
Okay. There are portions of that I don't disagree with, but I think that if I had to sum it up, I probably make more of Yancey and less of the military metaphors argument. Mm-hmm. I think that this Butler argument, for me, does not so much function as a link turn as it does a reason why their method might not resolve all of it. And I think that they have done some really nice work here in the block. It's less good in the 2NR, but for me it's sufficient to explain why, although they agree that the I is always becoming, that doesn't mean that we cannot disclose where we are in the present and how we are embodied. And I think that what's really devastating is that they call you out pretty explicitly for not talking about your position and privilege in the performance of the 1AC, and I never have an AF response to that argument. And for me, that is a big link. I mean, I think you maybe have some reasons why they're not able to fully resolve some of the problems with how they think we should deal with that, but that link argument, to me, is a big deal. And I think that I don't think that they're winning their omission link very much. And I think maybe you've got a defense of, the way that you hold institutions accountable, but that's a big disad to me. And I think that it complicates a lot of other things, like, for example, your ability to trace the rhizome. The other thing I think is that it gets to an impact that matters, and I think that that is something that it's hard for me to say about particularly the 1AR. The 2AR gets closer, but and especially when I compare it to the militaristic metaphors argument. I mean, I think you've won that they said replenishing the ranks, and that's kind of militaristic, but I'm not sure what to make of that in terms of the decision or how to deploy that in a way that's useful. And their evidence is pretty good about how, the gaze from nowhere empowers a form of whiteness that's detached, and that sort of high theory questioning is really, really complicated by that. And that's why I'm not sure that you get to untangle all of the intersectional rhizomic reasons why violence can occur. The other thing is that I think that they are making some arguments that they do this untangling and that they are addressing something that is outside space and time. Now, I don't think this is very detailed. I think there could be a better job done of this, but it does pass the sniff test, and I don't think the AF really deals with it. And that is the argument that the black body is oppressed and ontologically dead in a way that's outside space and time, which means that they address those things. They perform an analysis of neoliberalism and sort of seem to try to untangle some of that stuff. Now, they do it in a way that's arboreal, arguably, because they say that there is this thing that has produced all these other things, and maybe that's a place where if you have some impact you can access that you could gain leverage. But I don't think that the last AF rebuttals really do the work to engage those arguments. Now, this can be more detailed, like I said, and I think you can do more to explain why that means that the offense they get from untangling stuff isn't unique offense. But like I said, it's sufficient in the context of the way these speeches went down. As far as the Butler debate, so like I said, I thought the block was better here than the 2NR was. The argument that I would have loved the 2NR to go for that was in the block was that the impact to Butler is this sort of violence to the self that's like discomfort, and that you're impact turning that because the discomfort's real good and we should lean into the discomfort. I mean, that makes this decision clearer if you go for that in the 2NR. But still, I think there is enough of an extension of how conscientization interacts with it, for me, to say that while this may complicate your ability to solve this offense, it doesn't completely remove that. And since I think you're winning a big link, then that's cool. One last thing. I think that the role of the ballot claims in this debate are just sort of free-floating. I don't think there's much done to compare and resolve them. And so I think that had one of the last rebuttals really seized on that, it could have worked out for the team that did that pretty well. I mean, they're just like both teams sort of assert the role of the ballot at various points, but there's never much interaction between those claims.
Yeah, I don't particularly see the point in calling it a role in the ballot if you're just going to make it an impact weighing mechanism. Just like have an impact debate, unless you want the role of the ballot to like do something particular.
I think that the role of the ballot that the affirmative advances hurts more than helps. I actually kind of think that I vote that the negative is best positioned outside of neoliberalism. And I think that part of that is because you don't clarify whether it's a question of positionality or strategy, I think. I'm not really sure what it means to be outside of neoliberalism. And I think that the negative is convincing that your position, due to the view from nowhere, is one that is not outside of anti-blackness and therefore is not outside of the structures of neoliberalism. I think that you don't, I think that they just, I think that one of the main, well, first of all, I think what Chris said at the end of his decision is what the negative did. I think that you did that. That's kind of what I vote on, in fact. So I think that that's probably the major difference between Chris and I's decision. And I definitely agree with a lot of what was said before that. So I think that for me, it's just that they are kind of a position outside of neoliberalism. And I think that your entanglement argument is a view from nowhere because it presumes that there is something kind of that you can position outside of that. I think that that problematizes a lot of the way that the AF framing arguments go down about the productivity of the affirmative. And I also think that a huge, huge deal for me, and I agree that the 2NR wasn't very strong on this, but maybe it's because of my kind of understanding of hauntology and of kind of the anti-blackness literature, that to me the 2NR is very persuasive, even if brief, on the argument that blackness haunts civil society because the black body is socially dead. So I think that there is a very strong argument there as to why the kind of hauntology stuff, especially the evidence that you're reading, doesn't really create a distinguishing mechanism between their theory of the world and your theory of the world, and Yancey just kind of becomes the difference for me. And I think that a big problem with the Butler argument, and I think that you can kind of deal with this a little well. What Butler is actually saying in that evidence, well, maybe not that evidence, but the argument that Butler is making is that we can never know our full story, so we can never be entirely comfortable with who we are. We can't tell a universal truth about ourselves. And in fact, we are unintelligible to ourselves. I don't think that's offense against Yancey's argument. I think that they don't disagree with the thesis that we are unintelligible to ourselves. The question is, what is the position of blackness within that? And blackness is unintelligible to civil society. So the stories that they tell, I think, are not ones which try to give this thesis of universality of knowledge, but instead one of unintelligibility. So I think that there's kind of some interesting things going on there. So I don't think that negates the embodiment argument at all, and I think that's the problem. They're talking about two totally different things. Butler is saying we cannot pretend that our stories about ourselves are ones which are factual because they are fiction. And then I'm like, yeah, sure, that makes sense to me. But the embodied experience is one which is not fiction. because it is embodied. And Yancey says that the lack of understanding of your embodiment is a view from nowhere. And I think that there is no explanation from the affirmative about your embodied positionality within structures of whiteness. So I have trouble believing the idea that everything is entangled, especially because if blackness haunts civil society, if it is socially dead, then I think that questions the entanglement argument, because it means that blackness can never be entangled within civil society, that those structures are separate. And I guess I think that's kind of what the negative is trying to say. So to me, I think our decisions are very, very similar in that I just think that they win. They are kind of hauntology. Yancey is the difference. I think I just put more emphasis that your role of the ballot hurts you, in my opinion, more than it helps you, because it allows the negative to simply win, that they are more outside of neoliberalism. And I do think they meet the Yancey test, because I think the whole 1NC is that their confrontation with the model minority myth is part of the privilege of their identity. And it's one that they are confronting and starting from.
The model minority myth is itself a privilege.
Yeah.
That they encounter. Yeah. I think that you also could be doing a lot better job of explaining this hauntology argument in the context of the maquiadora, because if you want to contextualize the argument that everything is entangled, you need to talk about the different subjects who work in the maquiadoras and who are affected by that system of power. And it would also help you to forward an argument that subjects who enjoy white privilege ought to and are haunted by, especially heteronormative white males, or heterosexual white males are haunted by a lot of different intersecting oppressions that they are constantly implicated in. And that can be racism, that can be sexism, that can be classism, that can be heteronormativity, and that all of those things, even if the black subject haunts civil society, and it does, because that's the argument that Peterson is making. And I think that you need to recut more of this Peterson evidence. The article is really good. I know we have a lot of it up on our wiki from this year, but you need to be cutting longer cards and highlighting more of your evidence, because that article makes a lot of good arguments. But I guess I ended up deciding more on the side that I did, because I think that your corporeality arguments about responsibility are at some point an impact turn to the argument that an individual body ought to be particularly responsible towards a certain oppression. And the other thing I wanted to talk about that no one has talked about yet is the white saviors argument. I don't really know much of what to do with this at the end of the debate. You make like a pretty coherent link and internal link chain, and the impact at the end is kind of just like left hanging. If there's a part of the 2NR where you need to do impact work, it's this argument, because the 1AR doesn't handle it very well. And I think that making an argument that their sort of like ethical reorientation that tries to be the person who can save the victimized Mexican woman would play in really well with a lot of your arguments about redeeming civil society if you were to connect those dots.
Perhaps I was in error in doing this, but I actually kind of rolled that argument into Yancey by the end. I thought it was a reason why the white savior argument is why the AF method can't actually do the disentangling, why the high theory is sort of undercut by the lack of positionality.
Those arguments are definitely connected. I think the only reason I didn't connect them is because I didn't want to do it for you.
Yeah, I thought you did it.
I think you did too. The last thing, and I kind of forgot to say this when I was talking about unintelligibility, I think if you want this argument to make sense, you have to remember, and this is kind of like really crystallized the whole Yancey argument, is that even your impact argument is a view from nowhere, because there's never denial by the affirmative that blackness is unintelligible, right? And then your argument is that when you ask white folks to be an embodied experience and not be a view from nowhere, that forces them to be unintelligible, and that would be like the worst thing ever. Okay? And that's kind of like the argument that you're not trying to make that, but that is what you are saying.
How it's coming out.
Yeah, well, no, it's what you are saying. You're not trying to say it, but it is not just how it's coming out. That's what the way you framed your argument is. And I think that's why it really crystallized for me that view from nowhere ultimately cannot respond to the questions of the negative, because it's one which assumes the idea that it's, well, we can't be unintelligible. That would be violent. That would force policing. Unintelligibility is bad. And that is something that we should not be confronted with, even if we are from positions of privilege. It's just like, well, that's exactly how the view from nowhere functions, is that the flip side of that is that is the positionality of blackness and the ability to do you see what I'm saying there? It's like the ability to say that I can't even imagine being asked to be unintelligible.
Yet another reason why the leaning into discomfort good arguments would be particularly helpful.
I like that framing at the beginning. You should have held on to that.
My question for all really just is, how do you valid or did you valid the femicide
You mean like the victimization? One of my problems with that, and I didn't really know what to do with that because, well, there are a couple of things. The first of all is that your kind of impact argument to that is neoliberal.
Yeah.
You're like, we should recognize economic agency. Like, their reps don't recognize economic agency.
They're empowered because they work in a factory anyway.
I'm just like, well, yeah, I thought you all should have been like, this is effed up, right? Like, this is like, I thought you could have just won on with your roll of the ballot on just like, they have said in the 2NR that agency is tied to economics. That is the center kind of locus of neoliberalism, is the idea that as long as you have economic agency, you are a free agent. And in maquiladoras and with women in the economy and with non-white people in the economy, that is effed up to say that, because the exact thing that allows to happen is the F. The reason that women can be killed, tortured, raped, etc. within these factories is because the far right says you have economic agency. So that's the reason that you're sexually assaulted, is because you are an economic agent and you made the decision to make that money. So we're no longer as a system, we're no longer responsible. I think you all should have capitalized on that.
It pushes the responsibility onto the women themselves for taking the jobs that they need to make the money to live.
That's what he said.
And saying it empowers them.
Frankly, I think you should say that even if they don't make this argument. I kind of think you need to be saying more of that kind of thing. You know, like the impact.
Just generally talking about the app more.
Yeah, I thought you sounded real cool on all of the stuff that you were saying. I thought that your explanation of the theory and everything was really awesome. I kind of thought that you were ahead until I kind of put the pieces together. Just rhetorically, I thought you were ahead in the way that you're explaining it. But you just gotta talk about the specifics of the app, not just the theory of the app, but the specifics, because they basically ended up winning your two theory.
Yeah.
And you don't have an embodied specific experience with your affirmative, and I think a lot of that was because you left the specifics of the app behind and wanted to talk too much about the theory of entanglement and things like that. So,
on a personal note, you two are fantastic, and it's been a real pleasure. This is my first time judging you two, but obviously I liked something.
Good debate, y'all.
Thank you all very much.
Before the RFD started, as the
Yeah, they did. 2-1.
I really hope we're not using this room anymore.
It's okay, dude.
What do you